Imagine opening a world map tomorrow, but something feels wrong. The countries you know are different. The borders have changed. The alliances you grew up learning about never existed. Europe has a completely different center of power. The Soviet Union never became a superpower. And the world order that shaped the last 80 years was replaced by another version of history. This is the world that could have existed if Germany had won World War II. But this is not a story about victory. It is a story about how one different outcome could have changed the map of the entire planet. Because history is not always decided by decades. Sometimes it is decided by a few critical moments. And World War II had several moments where the future could have taken a completely different direction. In 1939, Germany began its rapid expansion across Europe. At first, the world watched as country after country fell. Poland was defeated within weeks. France collapsed in months. A military machine that many believed could not be stopped was moving across the continent. But the biggest challenge was never Western Europe. It was the East. In 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest land invasion in history. The goal was simple: destroy the Soviet Union before it could recover. And at the beginning, it looked possible. German forces pushed deep into Soviet territory. Millions of Soviet soldiers were captured. Major cities came under threat. For a moment, the future of Europe appeared uncertain. But then history changed direction. The Soviet Union survived. The winter arrived. Supply lines stretched too far. Resistance grew stronger. And the war entered a completely different phase. But what if that moment had gone differently? Imagine a different 1941. The Soviet government collapses. Moscow falls. The Eastern Front ends with a German victory. Suddenly, the map of Europe begins to transform. A country that had once been one of the world's largest powers disappears from the global stage. Eastern Europe becomes the center of a new political order. Borders are redrawn. Governments change. And Berlin becomes the dominant power on the continent. The Europe we know today would not exist. The European Union, modern alliances, the political borders created after 1945. All of them would follow a completely different path. But controlling a continent is not the same as controlling history, because the bigger question is, could such a massive empire actually survive? A victorious Germany would face a problem that has challenged every large empire throughout history: size. The larger a territory becomes, the harder it is to control. Millions of people would live under a new political system. Resistance movements could continue. Resources would become harder to manage. Economic pressure would increase. And maintaining power across an entire continent would require constant stability. The war might be won, but the peace could become the real challenge. Now look beyond Europe, because the biggest change would not only be on the map, it would be in the balance of global power. In our timeline, the end of World War II created two dominant superpowers: the United States and the Soviet Union. Their rivalry shaped almost every major event of the second half of the 20th century. This was the Cold War. But in this alternate world, one side of that rivalry disappears. No Soviet superpower, no familiar Cold War, no same space race, no same nuclear competition. Instead, the world could enter a completely different struggle. A powerful Germany controlled Europe, a powerful United States, and nations caught between these two forces trying to protect their own interests. The world would not become simpler. It would become unfamiliar. Asia would also look different. During World War II, Japan was expanding across East Asia and the Pacific. A German victory in Europe could change Japan's position. The United States might make different strategic decisions. Countries that became major powers after 1945 might never rise in the same way. The alliances that define today's world could look completely different. A different 1945 could create a different 1950. A different 1950 could create a completely different century. Technology would also follow another path. World War II accelerated some of humanity's biggest scientific breakthroughs: rocket technology, computers, aircraft development, nuclear research. In our timeline, these advancements were heavily influenced by competition between major powers after the war, but remove one major player and the race changes. The first person on the moon might have happened at a different time. Nuclear technology could develop differently. The internet and modern computing could follow another path. The world of technology we know today may have looked completely different. But there is another side to this alternate timeline. A military victory does not automatically create a successful future. History has shown that powerful empires often face their greatest threats from within: economic problems, political instability, internal resistance, the difficulty of controlling enormous territories. Even the strongest nations in history eventually faced limits. So perhaps the biggest question is not, could Germany have won World War II? The bigger question is, what would happen after the victory? A different ending to World War II would not simply change who controlled Europe. It could change the entire structure of the modern world. different borders, different alliances, different technology, different global powers. The map we see today is the result of millions of decisions made across history. Change one major event, and everything that follows begins to change. That is what makes alternate history so fascinating, because every map tells a story, and every story begins with one question: what if? Subscribe to Lost Timelines for more alternate histories, forgotten events, and mysteries that changed the world.